Good morning, everyone. It's May 19th, 2019. I'm Eric. I'm here at the Free Thought Project. After Army Colonel warns a false flag to start war with Iran, the U.S. blames Iran for attacks. And then, since it's on the same topic, we're going to go over here to DC Clothesline. As Bolton pushes for war with Iran, let's remember his quote from 2010. If I had to say something I knew was false to protect American national security, I would do it. One from Caitlin Johnstone and the other from Matt Argus. For most of the wars in our history, there have been either bald-faced lies to justify going to war or false flag attacks. And we should be on the lookout for these things at the present time. Often the mainstream media becomes a de facto government employee, taking the claims of U.S. officials and reporting them as proven fact. And nothing exemplifies this penchant better than reporting on the Gulf of Tonkin incident, perhaps one of the most flagrant lies ever dreamed up as a justification for war. You remember that, don't you? On August 5th, 1964, the New York Times reported, President Johnson has ordered retaliatory action against gunboats and certain supporting facilities in North Vietnam after renewed attacks against American destroyers in the Gulf of Tonkin. Additional outlets such as the Washington Post echoed this claim. And we all know it was not true at all. In fact, the Gulf of Tonkin turned out to be a fictitious creation, courtesy of the government to escalate war in Vietnam, leading to the deaths of tens of thousands of U.S. troops and millions of Vietnamese, fomenting the largest anti-war movement in American history, and tarnishing the reputation of a nation once considered at least somewhat noble in the eyes of the world. Not anymore. In 2010, more than 1,100 transcripts from the Vietnam era were released, proving Congress and officials raised serious doubts about the information fed to them by the Pentagon and White House. But this internal grumbling took place, or while this internal grumbling took place, mainstream media dutifully reported official statements as if the veracity of the information could not be disputed. You know, like they did with the weapons of mass destruction. Tom Wells, author of the exhaustive expose, The War Within, America's Battle Over Vietnam, explained the media almost exclusive reliance on U.S. government officials as sources of information and reluctance to question official pronouncements on national security issues. So they just say, okay, anything you say, right? Yay, we're going to war. I mean, I remember the first war in Iraq. What was it? Operation Desert Storm, I believe. and Sean Hannity and a bunch of them. They were, let's send over let's send over the mother of all bombs, and they were really rooting for destroying Iraq. So basically, the mainstream media has turned into the propaganda arm for the government. And before we had television, it was newspapers doing this. If due diligence had been performed and reporters had raised appropriate doubts about the Gulf of Tonkin false flag, it's arguable whether support for the contentious war would have lasted as long as it did. And now a very similar event has unfolded this week, in which ships were allegedly attacked near the Strait of Hormuz, and an initial U.S. assessment indicated Iran was likely behind the attacks, according to the Wall Street Journal. Speaking to reporters on Monday, Trump said he's hearing little stories about Iran, apparently referring to U.S. intelligence officials' unsubstantiated claim that Iran has or was behind the alleged tanker attacks. Iran has denied any involvement. As President Trump continues to surround himself with neocon warhawks, the drums are beating harder for war with Iran. The rhetoric is becoming so strong that Trump himself, without provocation, began tweeting threats to the sovereign nation. The new tweets are quite to the contrary of his old ones. Well, that pushback against war was very, very brief, it looks like. All right, so I'm looking for the date here. All right. These are Trump's tweets about war during Obama's administration. Don't let Obama play the Iran card in order to start a war, in order to get elected. Be careful, Republicans. In order to get elected, Barack Obama will start a war with Iran. He was wrong, wasn't he? Remember that I predicted a long time ago that President Obama will attack Iran because of his inability to negotiate properly, not skilled. And he was wrong again. Remember what I previously said. Obama will someday attack Iran in order to show how tough he is. I always said that Barack Obama will attack Iran in some forum prior to the election. Didn't happen. And so on and so on and so on. Sadly, the United States has a tendency to repeat the same mistakes over and over again, which is why last July a U.S. Army colonel predicted that another Gulf of Tonkin incident could bring us into war with Iran. At the time, Fox News host Tucker Carlson and Colonel Douglas McGregor addressed the growing prospect of U.S. war with Iran and warned that a new Gulf of Tonkin incident could be used to drag us into it. I'm thinking probably whatever false flag they decide to use, I think probably it's going to have to be bigger than 9/11. Carlson mocked the neocons who claimed that Iran is the greatest threat to America, explicitly noting that virtually every attack in America has been inspired not by Iran, but by Iran's Sunni enemies. Carlson pointed out how the neocons are hell-bent on pushing the Trump administration into a new war. In quotes, "If there was ever a swamp in Washington, you are looking at it, the foreign policy establishment. They are working overtime to ensnare the president in a mess in Iran," Carlson said. "Let's hope that he understands exactly what's going on." Pointing out that Trump's recent attempts at diplomacy with North Korea and Russia, Colonel McGregor weighed in, noting that he thinks Trump will attempt to avoid war with Iran. However, he noted that a false flag could be used to drag us into it. So let's, for the sake of argument, Trump says, "I don't think a war with Iran is a good idea," and he pushes back hard on that. Well, the next step for the military-industrial complex would be a false flag. And given the personality of Donald Trump, I would say that yes, it will have to be a major, major false flag. In quotes again, "I think the president needs to watch carefully for the potential for something like the Gulf of Tonkin incident," Colonel McGregor said. "Many of your viewers may not remember that it never happened, and we could very well be treated to something like that in the Gulf. We should watch for that, and this is an example of President Trump's comments on fake news. He should not be sabotaged by fake news." Carlson then pointed out how the Trump admin has reacted to fake news by attacking Syria twice. Now, if that's any indication of what will ultimately happen with Iran, I would expect war to happen, because the circumstances are much different between Iran and Syria. For those who may be unaware, the plan to overthrow Iran has long been in the works. In fact, in April of 2012, Pulitzer Prize-winning journalist Seymour Hersh reported that the U.S. Joint Special Operations Command had trained MEK operatives at a secret site in Nevada from 2005 to 2009. MEK is the Iranian political militant organization that advocates for the violent overthrow of the current Iranian regime. They are hardly quiet about it. According to Hersh, MBK members were trained in intercepting communications, cryptography, weaponry, and small unit tactics at the Nevada site until President Barack Obama took office in 2009. Hersh also reported additional names of former U.S. officials paid to speak in support of MEK, including former CIA Director James Woolsey and Porter Goss, New York City Mayor Rudolph Giuliani, former Vermont Governor Howard Dean, former Director of the FBI Louis Freeh, and former UN Ambassador John Bolton, of course. Coincidentally, MEK was classified as a terrorist organization by the United States and its allies during this training period until they suddenly removed them from the list in 2012. So, and we do recall this particular interview here, right? You remember this. Will it play? Probably not. Probably not, knowing my damn luck. Anyway, we'll move on to this one here, since it is, Oh, it might play. Bert. Not even gonna wait for it. As Bolton pushes for war with Iran, let's remember his quote from 2010. If I had to say something I knew was false to protect American national security, I would do it. And this is Caitlin Johnstone. Come on. Oh, by the way, thanks to Luke Kettler, or no, not Kettler, Ketter. Once again, thank you, sir. I really appreciate your generosity. If you like my content, please do give me a thumbs up, subscribe, share. You can donate to my channel at my PayPal account, and there are 2 Discord links to hang out with and discuss all that needs to be done with other like-minded people. Journalist Whitney Webb recently tweeted a 2010 video clip I'd never seen before, featuring U.S. National Security Advisor John Bolton defending the use of deception in advancing military agendas, which highlights something we should all be paying attention to as Trump administration foreign policy becomes increasingly Boltonized. On a December 2010 episode of Fox News Freedom Watch, Bolton and the show's host, Andrew Napolitano, were debating about recent WikiLeaks publications, and naturally the subject of government secrecy came up. End quotes. Now, I want to make the case for secrecy in government when it comes to the conduct of national security affairs, and possibly for deception where that's appropriate, Bolton said. and don't get me wrong, deception to your enemy is part of the way you conduct war. But deception to your fellow countrymen to justify a war is a whole different matter. In quotes once more, Winston Churchill said during World War II that in wartime truth is so important it should be surrounded by a bodyguard of lies. And that's Orwellian as fuck. Right? Do you really believe that? Asked Napolitano. Absolutely, Bolton replied. So this dude will lie to you straight up when this false flag event finally unfolds. And again, I would expect it to be much, much larger than the 9/11 attack. The next attack will have to be so gruesome, so large scale, that it will leave the American people screaming for war. In quotes one more time, and then I'm going to wrap it up here. I don't think we're often faced with that difficulty, but would I lie where the D-Day invasion was going to take place to deceive the Germans? You'd better believe it, Bolton continued. And that is one of the tactics from the art of war. Of course, you're going to use deception when you're going to attack an enemy. But again, we're not talking about using deception in that way. We're talking about using deception to drag our nation into a war that need not be fought. So, just be looking for one of these major events. Again, it's gonna have to be a very large one, as we have become more and more desensitized to these attacks. It will have to be utterly shocking in order for it to be successful. And John Bolton, among others, will ultimately be behind it, just like 9/11. Anyway, thought I would share this with you all. I hope you have a great day. Till next time, kill the state and live free.